Permit or PGWP program, as well as the recently announced DLI list. We will also cover important points such as who can represent you in your immigration application and what you need to know before traveling to Canada. We will end the presentation with a Q&A session. As mentioned by Anandita, please use the Q&A box to send us your questions and we will answer them after the presentation. For those of you who are considering studying in Canada, we want you to know what Canada has to offer should you choose to study at a Canadian institution. So why choose Canada? First is that many Canadian universities are highly ranked in reputed international standings. Canadian college and university diplomas are recognized around the world, and the Canadian education system encourages cross-disciplinary studies to develop transferable skills such as critical thinking, teamwork, and communications. Second is that Canada is affordable and boasts a great quality of life with a low cost of living. Example, housing, transportation, tuition is lower in Canada than many other countries, including the US, France, and the UK. Third is that Canada is one of the safest countries in the world with a very low crime rate. Canada is one of the most ethnically and linguistically diverse countries in the world, with over 50% of population not speaking English as their first language. Last but not the least, if you would like to look at living in Canada after your studies, IRCC offers a postgraduate work permit to students who have obtained a diploma from a post-secondary school in Canada and are looking to gain work experience. This is an excellent way to continue to live in Canada while diversifying and developing on your professional skills. Now that you're seriously looking to choose Canada to study, or you have already done so, you need to understand that currently many people cannot travel. However, nationally, we are seeing positive changes from actions put in place to stop the spread of COVID-19. We are taking precautions, just like India, by ensuring that there is more physical distancing, mandatory mask wearing, and promoting good hygiene practices. Canada is working to slow down the spread of new cases by cautiously starting to allow more people to enter Canada. So this slide brings us to the new announcement as of October 20th. Canada is now allowing students to enter who are destined to designated learning institutions, also known as DLIs, which have an approved COVID-19 readiness plan, which is approved by the provincial or territorial government. As a part of the DLI's approved readiness plan, they are expected to provide, number one, information to international students on health and travel requirements before they arrive in Canada, help students with their quarantine plans and provide guidance or assistance in acquiring the necessities of life, such as food and medication during their quarantine. Third, have a readiness plan to establish protocols for the health of students in the event there are suspected or confirmed COVID-19 cases at the school. The list of DLIs with an approved COVID-19 readiness plan is now posted on IRCC's webpage for international students affected by COVID-19 restrictions and updated regularly as provinces and territories identify additional schools. This change to travel restrictions affects all international students, regardless of where they are traveling from and when their study permit was approved. Travelers should not make any travel plans until they have met all requirements and received all necessary authorizations. With the amended travel restrictions, immediate family members may be able to accompany an international student to Canada if their reason for travel is non-optional or non-discretionary, such as getting established in Canada in support of the student's study program. This could include a spouse or common law partner or a dependent. Accompanying family members of a student do require a letter of authorization to travel and must obtain that by writing to the IRCC COVID-19 exemption mailbox, which you can see on the screen. When writing to this mailbox, the applicant must explain why they feel they are exempted from travel restrictions. Through this slide, we want you to be clear that students who were approved before or after March 18 will now be allowed to travel to Canada, provided their DLI is on the list of schools with an approved COVID readiness plan. Their travel is considered essential in such circumstance. Please note that the March 18th important date was only applicable prior to October 20th, but is no longer relevant. If your study permit is to attend a school which is not listed on the DLI approved list, your visa will be deactivated. This means that you cannot travel to Canada at this time, as you will receive a no boarding message from the airline. We are aware of many service disruptions that are causing delays in the processing of your application. All applications received between now and January 31st, 2021 must be submitted online. This allows us to continually process applications across our network through work sharing of this caseload until operations normalize. We know that panel physicians are operating with less capacity. This means that it may take longer for you to obtain an appointment to complete your immigration medical exam. We also know that some businesses and schools remain closed or are operating at limited capacity. This means that it may take longer for you to obtain the supporting documents you need for your application. All of that being said, please be assured that we will not refuse any application for non-compliance or failure to submit the requested documents at this time. This means you do not have to worry about the deadlines specified in the request letters being sent to you. However, please note that we will not be able to complete the processing of your application until all required and requested documents have been received, so it is in your favor to submit these documents to us as soon as possible. On the IRCC website, we normally publish processing times for each of our missions for all of our lines of business. As we are prioritizing applications for people who are exempt from the travel restrictions, these processing times are no longer accurate. We are gradually bringing back many of our staff while adhering to physical distancing within the office. That being said, please continue to expect delays in responding to inquiries and uploading documents to your applications manually. If you need to update your application or submit a document, please use your MyCIC account to send us this information. This will automatically upload your documents and information into your application without any delay. Additionally, to increase efficiency, please only send one inquiry and wait for a response. Sending the same inquiry multiple times uses up more of our already limited resources, which could instead be used to process more cases. So we know that WACs remain closed at this time. This means that there is no mechanism to submit biometrics. We have started a two-way courier service with a fee of Rs 532 each way. We know that people are very anxious to obtain their visas. However, if you send your passport when it has not been requested, it will be returned to you unprocessed and at your own cost. Additionally, we may not be able to arrange for the return of your passport immediately, so be prepared for delays. Please do not send us requests for instructions. IRCC will send instructions to you via the email provided in your application. Additionally, we will post instructions on our Facebook page and the India WAC website when it is opened for everyone to submit their passports. We will prioritize processing based on the changes to travel restrictions. Applications destined to DLIs on the approved provinces and territories list will be prioritized for processing and will receive a final decision on their application if all required documents have been submitted. This means that if your application is approved, you will be issued a visa so that you can travel to Canada under the exemptions to the current travel restrictions. If your DLI is not on the approved provinces and territories list, we will only finalize applications which result in a refusal. If you meet eligibility requirements, your application will not be approved for a visa until travel restrictions are further amended or lifted. We still have cases that are awaiting approval in principle or AIP of their application. If you have decided to defer your studies or if you have switched institutions, please let us know immediately using your MyCIC account or webform if you don't have an online account set up. The AIP process was only for applications received prior to September 15, 2020, and for programs starting in 2020. For all applications received after September 15th, or for any application received at any time for programs starting in 2021 or later, your application will follow the regular process, meaning that you will only find out about approval of your application once all steps are completed. This means that these cases will not receive an AIP letter. Only refusals will be finalized, even if they are missing biometrics or medicals or both of them. AIP is essentially the eligibility assessment of your application. You can receive an AIP even if you're missing medicals or biometrics. The criteria listed on the screen are the same criteria which will be used to assess eligibility of applications who do not qualify for the two-stage or AIP process. Here are the criteria. First is that you're a genuine student. This means that you have demonstrated the academic and language capability through the submission of your previous academic transcripts and language test results, and that you're able and qualified to complete a program of study in Canada. Second is that you've been accepted by a DLI in Canada. This means that you've submitted a valid LOA or a letter of acceptance. Third is that you have sufficient funds to pay for your studies, living expenses, and transportation without working in Canada. This means you have submitted financial evidence of liquid funds to cover the first year of school and demonstrated by explanation and proof how you intend to pay for all of the remaining years of studies. Please note that if your application is refused and you did not complete a biometric enrollment, you do not need to submit a refund request for your biometrics fee. We will refund these automatically. Please allow for some delay as we continue to work with limited staff. So this slide reflects the documents which are needed to receive an AIP for the SDS and non-SDS stream. So first, let's look at the mandatory documents required for the SDS stream. First is that you need a valid letter of acceptance. Second is that you need to provide IELTS test result demonstrating 6 in each module. Third, you need to show a receipt or documentation that tuition has been paid for the first year, including any scholarships or grants that you may have received. Fourth, you need to provide a receipt for a GIC for 10,000 Canadian dollars. Fifth is that you need to submit your most recent secondary or post-secondary school transcripts. And lastly, for Quebec-bound students, you need a CAQ. For the non-SDS stream, the mandatory requirements for the eligibility decision are: first, to submit a valid LOA. Second is to provide an IELTS, TOEFL, or PTE test results. Please note that online language test results will not be accepted. Third is that show liquid funds to pay for your tuition, living expenses, and transportation for the first year of school, plus an explanation and evidence of how you intend to pay for all of the remaining subsequent years of school without relying on working in Canada. Fourth, you need to submit your most recent secondary or post-secondary school transcripts. And last but not the least, you need a CAQ for Quebec-bound students. Additionally, we recommend that you submit a statement of purpose. Please note that if you're unable to submit a required document, for example, upfront medicals, your application will be moved to the non-SDS stream. Admissibility assessments will only be made if you pass the eligibility assessment. Otherwise, your application will be refused if you fail eligibility. For this, you must, number 1, provide biometrics. Number 2, complete your immigration medical exam. 3, answer all questions truthfully and completely. This includes declaring all previous visa refusals for all countries, providing all of your background history for the last 10 years, and being truthful about any previous arrests and criminal history. Fourth, it is important to only submit authentic documents. Even if you meet all of the admissibility assessment requirements, only students destined to schools on the approved DLI list will be finalized and issued visas. For all other applications where admissibility requirements are met and the student is destined to a school not on the approved list, their application will be on hold until their school is added to the DLI approved list, the travel restrictions are amended to extend to them, or the travel restrictions are lifted. For all applications which do not meet either eligibility or admissibility requirements of both, they will immediately be refused. Now, you must comply with the study permit conditions if your in-class courses are temporarily moved to an online-only format or suspended completely because of COVID-19. For this, you must stay enrolled in your DLI and participate in your studies online if your DLI offers them. If your DLI closes permanently due to COVID-19, you have 150 days to enroll in a study program at a new DLI, or to change your status to a worker or visitor, or leave Canada. Now, many of you will have questions about working in Canada and how current changes may affect your opportunity to be employed. So why is PGWP important for many students? Work experience provides a better opportunity to gain the language skills and work experience required to apply for permanent resident status in Canada. In addition, Canada has some of the highest salary for workers. Furthermore, persons with Canadian work experience are often able to demonstrate that they have the skills, knowledge, and critical thinking required to do the job. It is worth noting that you can obtain up to a 3-year PGWP. This all depends on the length of your eligible studies. You can also complete more than one program and combine their length towards your PGWP if each program is eligible and is at least 8 months in length. So new measures have been introduced with respect to the PGWP. You should know this information prior to entering Canada so you're aware of the rules. If you're unable to travel to Canada at this time due to travel restrictions, your eligible online studies will count towards your PGWP if you already have a study permit, or you have been approved for a study permit, or you applied for a study permit before beginning your program in either 2020 or winter 2021. For those who applied before September 15th for a 2020 start date, we know that some of you are still awaiting your AIP. We are working hard to process these applications. Please make sure your application is complete or it will cause delays. This may be a bit difficult to understand, so please listen carefully. IRCC wanted to provide maximum flexibility for students to be able to obtain their PGWP if they have genuinely studied at a Canadian institution, either in or outside Canada. If you fall in any of the situations listed, you can complete up to 100% of your program online while outside Canada if your program is between 8 and 12 months in length, and you started your program of study between May and September 2020. This essentially means that taking an entire 1-year program online outside of Canada may qualify the entire program for a PGWP. In addition, you can complete up to 50% of one program online up until April 30, 2021, while outside Canada, if you will also eventually complete at least 50% of your program in Canada. Furthermore, you can complete up to 50% of 2 programs online up until April 30, 2021, while outside Canada, if you graduate from 2 different programs within 2 years of each other, and each program is at least 8 months in length, and at least one of the programs started between May and September 2020, and at least 50% of the combined programs is completed in Canada. This means that you could potentially complete a 1-year program outside of Canada and then take another 1-year program in Canada, and both programs will give you the maximum allowable time towards your PGWP. So this section applies to students who are already in Canada. Essentially, if a student switched to part-time studies or had to take a break in studies, for example, the spring-summer semester may have been cancelled due to the pandemic, they may still continue to work on and off campus, provided that they were previously a full-time student and already authorized to work on or off campus pre-pandemic. For off-campus work, the maximum limit is still 20 hours per week during the academic session and full-time during regular academic breaks. School closure, part-time studies, or semester cancellations due to COVID-19 do not count as regularly scheduled academic breaks. If you decide to study and work in Canada, you may then decide to make Canada your permanent home. To begin the process of applying for permanent residence, you must submit your profile in the Express Entry online system. This will show you how many comprehensive ranking system points you have based on your education, work experience, language ability, and other factors. On a regular basis, IRCC invites candidates with the most points in the Express Entry pool to apply for permanent residence through one of the many federal economic immigration programs. Having a plan to quarantine is a very important piece to the travel restrictions being relaxed for international students. Please make sure that you follow it. Not doing so could end up costing you or others COVID-19, as well as imprisonment, removal from Canada, and a fine of up to 750,000 Canadian dollars. Through this slide, we want to inform you of various fraud activities and misinformations related to immigration applications. We strongly advise you to scan the QR code on the screen for more information. First, it is important to protect yourself. We always say that if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Please never share your personal information with unauthorized strangers. Second are fraudulent websites and scams. Websites may claim to be official Government of Canada websites. They do this to trick people into paying money to them. Third are email scams. Please note that IRCC will never send you an email from a private address like Hotmail or Gmail. IRCC addresses always end in .gc.ca or canada.ca. Fourth are telephone scams. Please note that IRCC will never ask you for any sort of payment by telephone. And last but not the least, there are unauthorized agents. We always say that you do not have to use a consultant to submit an application. However, if you choose to use one, please ensure that your representative is legally authorized to represent you. You can do this by visiting canada.ca/immigration-representative. Examples of authorized agents include members of Law Society in Canada, members of Chambre de Notaire in Quebec, and members of ICCRC, which is a regulatory body for immigration consultants in Canada. An authorized representative can provide you with valuable tips to avoid paying too much money for an immigration service, as well as what you can expect. Any paid representative must be authorized. Unpaid representatives could be family members or a trusted friend. So on this slide, you can see the many ways to connect with us. You can see on the screen the website for IRCC and the links to our social media handles on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Please make sure to follow us on social media for regular updates regarding WAC's two-way courier service and additions to the DLI COVID-19 Readiness Plan approved list. So this brings us to the end of the presentation. I would now request Anandita to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Shakir. Hope the information provided by Shakir was helpful, and in order to provide additional information, I will now be addressing a few frequently asked questions which we have collated from different sources. So, to begin with, just a little bit of information about the new travel exemptions for international students. To be exempt from the current travel restrictions, a student must be in possession of either an approved study permit and visa, or a port of entry letter of introduction, and their designated learning institute should have a COVID-19 readiness plan approved by their province or territory. You should know that you are not supposed to travel to Canada until at most 3 weeks before the start date of your class. Coming to the questions now, I would now take up a few questions regarding the meaning of essential travel with regard to the new travel amendments and restrictions. So what do the new updates in the travel restrictions mean for international students? As of October 20th, 2020, some DLIs are now able to reopen to international students who aren't currently in Canada and who have a study permit or have been approved for a study permit and are attending a DLI with a COVID-19 readiness plan approved by its province or territory. As a student, your travel to Canada won't be considered essential or non-discretionary if your study program has been cancelled or suspended, or you're entering Canada for any reason other than to study. How do I demonstrate that my travel to Canada is essential to the airline and when I am seeking to enter Canada? You will not be required to produce any other documentation to board your flight other than your valid passport, your study permit visa, or your port of entry letter of introduction, or both, letter confirming the start date of your classes from your DLI, evidence of your ability to quarantine yourself for 14 days prior to studying once you land in Canada, and evidence that you have enough money to support yourself during your studies in Canada. All other students destined to DLIs not on the list, despite having reasons for not being able to complete courses online, will not be able to travel to Canada at this time. This includes students that may have previously been in Canada and were studying. So how do I know if my school is on the approved DLI list? The list is on the IRCC website. Search for the designated learning institutions under IRCC COVID-19. That's a link for our website directly. If your DLI is not on the list, please contact your learning institute directly to find out if they have submitted a COVID-19 readiness plan and at what stage they are regarding their approval. Now this brings us to a more important question, which is the two-stage processing available for 2021 start dates? The answer to this is no. The two-stage processing is only for classes that started in 2020. If you have already deferred your studies prior to receiving your approval in principle or stage 1 approval, you will fall under the regular process. This means that you will not receive an AIP letter and you must wait for your application to be approved at its final stage when we are ready to issue a visa. At this time, only applications to study at schools on the DLI approved list will be finalized to visa issuance. All other applicants must wait until either their school gets on the list of the approved DLIs or the travel restrictions are lifted. The next question is, I have not received an approval in principle and my DLI is listed to be approved with a COVID-19 readiness plan. Will I now receive stage 1 AIP and then later will it be reviewed for stage 2? The answer to this is yes. You will receive an AIP letter if you submitted your application prior to September 15th and are beginning your program in 2020. In addition, we will send you a request letter to submit your biometrics and medical exam if you have not yet provided them. Otherwise, if your biometrics and medicals have already been submitted, we will assess stage 2. If you pass stage 2 and your DLI has an approved COVID-19 readiness plan, we will send you a letter to submit your passport for visa issuance. So what documents should you have submitted to receive an AIP? If you were applying under the student direct stream, then the documents that you were required to submit are a letter of acceptance from a DLI, your IELTS test results demonstrating a 6.0 score in each band, tuition paid for the first year, a guaranteed investment certificate for 10,000 Canadian dollars, your most recent secondary or post-secondary school transcripts, and if you are a Quebec-bound student, then a certificate of acceptance, more commonly known as a CAQ. The documents that were required to be submitted or are required to be submitted if you are applying under the general study permit processing stream are a letter of acceptance from a DLI, your IELTS, TOEFL or PTE test results, evidence of financial ability to pay for tuition, transportation and living expenses, your most recent secondary or post-secondary school transcripts, and if you are a Quebec-bound student, you would need a certificate of acceptance. These are the same documents which are required to make the eligibility assessment for cases that do not qualify under the two-stage processing. The next question is, what if I'm missing a few documents like medicals? Will I still qualify for SDS? So the answer to this is no. If you are not able to submit all the documents as required under the SDS stream, The officer will assess your application as a regular non-STS application. The next question is, what do I do if I cannot submit a document within the requested time frame? Upload a letter of explanation explaining why you can't submit the required documents like your proof of enrollment, final transcripts, or anything else that you're not able to submit at this time. For example, you may not be able to get these documents because offices are closed. When we start processing your application, we'll ask for the missing documents and give you an extension to provide them, if needed. We won't reject your application if you can't submit the required documents, other than your letter of acceptance because of COVID-19. Note that you must provide the letter of acceptance from a DLI upfront when you apply. We won't process applications that are submitted without these documents. So how will you know if an approval in principle is granted to you? A letter confirming your stage 1 approval or approval in principle will be sent to your online account or email. Ensure you check both, including your junk mail folders. You may also receive an additional letter requesting you to complete the rest of your requirements, example biometrics or medicals, if you have not already done so, in order to be issued a study permit. For letters received by email, please expand the headers in order to ensure it is coming from IRCC. The next question is, if I am granted an approval in principle, may I assume that once I complete my biometrics and medicals, I will get a student visa? The answer to this is no. An approval in principle is not the same as being granted a visa. The officer will still need to establish that you meet admissibility requirements. Note that a stage 2 refusal is uncommon provided that you are truthful in your application, that you have not provided any fraudulent documents, and that you comply with any additional requests immediately. The next question is, when will my stage 2 admissibility decision be completed? Your stage 2 admissibility decision will be assessed after AIP and before visa issuance. This includes an assessment of your medical, biometrics, as well as security and criminality background questions. If your application contains all the documents required for the stage 2 assessment, it will be assessed at the same time as stage 1. Note that we will not finalize any applications for approval for students destined to DLIs not on the approved list. The next question is, will IRCC issue any co-op work permit to students upon receiving approval of a study permit in principle or a stage 1 approval? A stage 1 eligibility approval is not a guarantee that a study permit application will be approved. As a result, a co-op work permit cannot be issued before a final decision is made on a study permit application. However, this does not prevent you from beginning your co-op program while abroad. The work permit is only required for work to be done in Canada and not outside Canada. What requirements need to be completed to receive approval for stage 2 admissibility decisions? In order to conduct this assessment, you must provide biometrics, complete your immigration medical exam, answer all questions truthfully and completely. This includes declaring all previous visa refusals for all countries, providing all background history for the last 10 years, and being truthful about any previous arrests and criminal history, and submit only authentic documents. The next question is, what if my schooling starts prior to me receiving my stage 1? You can start school online prior to obtaining your approval in principle or stage 1 approval. If you receive AIP after you started school, all the time will still count towards your PGWP or postgraduate work permit, provided that you submitted your study permit application before you began your online studies. The next question, which is also a question which we are asked very frequently given the current situation, is, will I receive a refund of my tuition fees if my application is refused when I am studying online in India with a DLI in Canada? DLIs are responsible for setting their refund policies. We, IRCC, cannot speak to this issue, but students are encouraged to ensure that they are familiar with the various DLI policies relevant to their situation. The next question is, when should I submit my passport for visa issuance? The visa application centers in India remain closed. In the interim, Visa Application Center, a 2-week courier service has been launched. We are requesting passports in stages in order to receive passports in an orderly manner. Orderly submission of passport will expedite processing of visa requests. Applicants are advised not to submit their passport unless they receive a 2-week courier instruction. IRCC will be prioritizing student applications from approved DLIs where students can travel to Canada. The next set of questions will address a lot of queries with regard to the latest travel amendments. The first question is, will my DLI have to provide me any supporting document even if they are on the list of provinces or territories approved institutes with a COVID-19 readiness plan? The answer to this will be yes. DLIs are to provide guidance regarding the requirements to travel and quarantine in Canada, including what to do should someone encounter or be affected with COVID-19. The next question is, should my institute provide an updated letter of acceptance stating that they are on the government's list of approved institutes? The answer to this is no. This is not a requirement since the list has been published and will be updated regularly. In case your DLI is not on the list, you may want to contact them to find out at what stage they are regarding their approval, as mentioned earlier. You only need to provide an updated letter of acceptance if you are deferring your studies and/or are switching DLIs. The next question is, I am eligible to travel to Canada as per the amended travel restrictions, but I still have not submitted my biometrics due to VAC closures. Is there any provision for me to travel without submitting my biometrics here in India and provide them once I land in Canada? The answer to this is no. All students must submit their biometrics in order to qualify for a visa. There are no exceptions to this rule. The next question is, my DLI is not currently on the approved list. Are there any chances of more DLIs being added? The answer to this is yes. The approved list of DLIs will be reviewed regularly and updated every 2 weeks. In order to keep yourself updated of the most recent list, please follow our IRCC website and also follow us on social media at Facebook and Twitter, and our handle is @CanadaInIndia. I'm sorry. My DLI is on the approved list, but my classes are still going to be online. Can I travel to Canada? The short answer to this is yes. As per the new travel amendments, irrespective of the medium of classes, whether they are physical or online, students can travel to Canada as long as they have an approved study permit and their DLI is on the provinces and territories list of approved DLIs. The next question is, will I be able to work in Canada now once I am in the country, even if my classes are online? The answer to this is yes. Once you land in Canada, you are eligible to work for up to 20 hours a week. You may also work outside of Canada if you choose to continue your studies online abroad. In this circumstance, IRCC cannot enforce the amount of hours you can work, although we do recommend you focus on your studies as a priority. The next set of questions are related to language tests. So the next question is, may I submit a language proficiency test result that I completed online? If my school has accepted my result for my admission, is this sufficient? The answer to this is no. IRCC does not accept results from any online language tests. There are no changes to the language proficiency assessment score requirement. The recommended tests are IELTS for English and TEF or TCF for French. We also accept TOEFL and PTE academic test results. Test scores from Duolingo or any other online language test will not be accepted for any immigration application purposes, including for study permits. The next question is something which I have come across even in our Q&A box today. What if my IELTS score has expired or is about to expire? Given the limited availability of open test centers at this time, we will accept the IELTS results as long as they were valid on the day when you submitted your application. The next question is regarding deferring your studies, as a few of you have already done so or are in the process of doing so. So the question is, my application is still pending. What happens if I defer my studies to a later semester? If you choose to defer your studies, ensure you submit a new letter of acceptance using the web form on our IRCC website as soon as possible so we may update your file. The next question is, I receive approval of my study permit but deferred my studies. How do I extend my visa? In this case, you will need to apply for a new study permit with updated information. Extensions of study permits are only granted to students already in Canada. The next question regarding deferrals is, may I defer my studies after I receive an approval in principle or stage 1 approval? The answer to this is yes. However, you must submit your new letter of acceptance from your DLI as soon as possible. If you change your course of study or decide to study at a different DLI, the officer may want to reassess your stage 1 decision. The next set of questions are related to the postgraduate work permit. The first question is, when determining if 50% or more of a program has been completed in Canada for PGWP eligibility, how is the time calculated? The answer to this is 50% of a total program of study is calculated based on the number of courses completed in Canada. In a situation where part of a semester is completed in Canada and the other part online overseas, IRCC will consider that the semester was completed in Canada. Applicants may have to submit additional documents from the DLI. The next question is, I have already completed 50% of my program online prior to the fall semester. Will I be eligible to receive a PGWP? There are numerous situations with regard to the answer for this kind of a query. You may complete 100% of your program online if your program is between 8 and 12 months in length, you started your studies between May and September 2020, and you finish your program by April 30th, 2021. You may complete up to 50% of your program online until April 30th, 2021 if you complete the other 50% of your program in Canada. And you may complete up to 50% of your studies online until April 30th, 2021 if you will graduate from 2 different eligible study programs within 2 years of each other. One of the programs started between May and September 2020. Each program is at least 8 months long, and you complete at least 50% of the combined length of the programs in Canada. The next question with regard to a PGWP is, if I switch from full-time to part-time studies, will this affect the duration of my PGWP? The answer to this is that students may put their studies on hold or become part-time students due to course cancellations as a result of public health measures at DLIs and COVID-19. For the winter, spring and summer 2020 semesters, when a student's status changes from full-time to part-time due to changes in course delivery at a DLI, their eligibility for a post-graduation work permit will not be impacted. Starting in fall 2020, students who do not maintain a full-time status may not be eligible for the PGWP. The last set of frequently asked questions I will be addressing are with regards to accompanying dependents of international students. So these could be your spouses and your children as well. So the question is, I submitted an application for my dependents along with my study permit application. Will they be processed at the same time? The answer to this is yes. Applications for spouse and children of prospective students will be processed at the same time. You must provide financial documentation to show how you will be able to support your dependents without working in Canada. The next question is, with the new travel amendments in place, what will be the status of the spousal applications which were in process and whose spouses are now eligible to travel to Canada? So the answer to this is IRCC is processing those applications and all applicants will receive decisions on their applications soon. However, because of service disruptions and limited staff, there is a backlog which IRCC is working through, so applicants are requested to kindly be patient. And the next question, which will be the last question with regards to this part of our webinar today is, will my dependents be eligible to travel to Canada with me if they have temporary resident visas and I have a study permit? With the amended travel restrictions, immediate family members may be able to accompany an international student to Canada if their reason for travel is non-optional or non-discretionary, such as getting established in Canada in support of the principal applicant's study program. This could include a spouse or a common law partner, a dependent, or in the case of a minor child who will be studying in Canada, a parent or legal guardian. Like all travelers to Canada, international students and accompanying family members will be subject to all public health measures, including the mandatory 14-day quarantine period upon arrival in Canada. To be exempt from the travel restrictions, temporary resident visa holders who are immediate family members of study permit holders require a letter of authorization from IRCC for an authorization to travel may be made by sending us an email. I will be sharing this email address in the Q&A box right after this part of the webinar, so you can copy it from there for your records. When you write to us with requesting for a letter of authorization, you need to include the following information in the email. Documentation showing that they are an immediate family member of a study permit holder, why they need to travel for an essential purpose, and their file number, name, and date of birth. And with this, I now come to the end of the frequently asked questions part of our webinar. As mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, we will now be taking up questions which we have received from you during the course of the webinar in our Q&A box. And these will be addressed by our student unit manager, Ms. Elena Balboa. I would request Shakir and Elena to please take this up now. Over to you guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Anandita. Elena, I hope you can hear me clear.
Yes, go ahead, please.
All right. So the first question, Elena, is that I have applied my visa on the 25th of September for fall intake. Under which category will my visa fall? Is it the AIP category or the general category?
So the two-stage process, which includes the AIP, only applies to applications which were received before September 15. And so since you submitted your application after September 15, you will fall under the regular pre-pandemic style processing, and you will not receive an AIP letter for your application. So if everything is on file for the applications that do not qualify for the two-stage processing, this essentially means that number one, you will not get an AIP letter. You will not receive any sort of documentation to indicate whether or not your eligibility is approved, whether your admissibility is approved. If everything happens to be on file, the only correspondence you will receive from us is when we're ready to request your passport for visa issuance. So if there are other things missing from your file, certainly we will send you a request letter for those documents or information. Otherwise, just be patient. The only letter you might receive is just that passport request letter when we're ready to finalize your application. Thank you.
Thanks, Elena. So the next question is, when will IRCC begin issuing second stage approvals for students in India? Will the second stage approval begin only after WACs are completely open?
So right now, the only applications which we are approving for visa issuance are the applications where the DLI of destination is on the DLI approved list. Why? Because if you're destined to a DLI that is not going to permit you to travel to Canada at this time, we do not need to expend resources, limited resources at that, on applications where it wouldn't matter if you had a visa anyways, because you can't travel at this time. So we are prioritizing essentially cases where the applicant is able to travel, i.e., your DLI is on the DLI approved list. So in terms of a stage 2 approval, there is really no stage 2 approval. The stage 2 approval is either your visa will be issued or not. And so for those cases, really it all depends on whether or not the travel restrictions will either be amended or lifted. So, and it won't so much matter anymore whether or not the VACs will reopen, because we do have this two-way passport submission for cases where we are able to issue the visa. So as of right now, I'll say that in terms of those cases, please be patient. We will let you know when we're ready to request those passports for all of those cases. But really, the biggest indicator for you is whether or not you will be able to travel to Canada. And this is really monitoring the travel restrictions on our website, whether it's your DLI that's on the approved list, whether those travel restrictions are changed or amended so that it's more broad or potentially more restricted. Thank you.
Thanks, Elena. So the next question is that I have applied for study permit in August for the Jan 2021 intake. Please let me know when will the processing of my application start, as it is on the same status since then.
So for applications that are for 2021, I can tell you that my office in particular has already begun processing those cases. So it's not as if we're holding up cases for 2021 start dates. the priority really is to get all of the cases done for 2020 first. And I know that some offices with larger workloads are still trying to work through that workload. So we really ask all of our clients to be patient. Now, you may not have received any information or updates on your case because your case doesn't fall under this two-stage process, right? So you shouldn't be expecting any type of documentation from us, really, if your case is complete, other than potentially a passport request letter when it's ready for you to travel, when we're ready to issue that visa. So this could be a reason why you just haven't heard anything or any updates on your case. But that's not to say that there hasn't been any movement on your case, because there may have well been. Thank you.
Thanks, Alina. So the next question is that for students who've already received their AIPs and have a biometric instruction letter that has already expired, what can we do about that expired letter?
So all of the biometrics request letters have had their expiry dates extended only because the VACs remain closed. And frankly, it would be a waste of resources to have to reissue these letters. So once the VACs do reopen, they are very well aware that people will be coming to them with expired biometrics letters, and they will be accepting those. In cases where, for example, the biometrics letter may be expired for way too long, like we haven't really developed policy yet on what the time frame might be in terms of how long can these letters be expired. But certainly we will communicate to you if there are any such restrictions. And for those cases, frankly, we'll just reissue those letters. If you don't receive a letter, once the VACs reopen, the letter that you currently have is essentially extended. Thank you.
Thanks, Alina. So the next question is that I have been previously refused a US study visa. Can this lead to a refusal in the second stage processing?
So my number one advice to you is you should tell us about this refusal in your application, because a lot of applications get refused, and we make a misrepresentation determination against them, and they're barred from reapplying for 5 years because they've failed to disclose specific information on their application. So number one, make sure you tell us on your application that you have had these previous refusals. Now, in terms of whether or not this will actually impact your application, it depends on what the refusal grounds are. There are refusal grounds, to me, what I would like to call fixable refusal grounds. For example, you forgot to provide me your academic transcripts, so I am refusing your application. This is fixable because you can technically reapply and provide the correct documentation. Or you didn't provide enough evidence that you have the funds to go study. This is fixable because the next time you apply, you can provide more evidence. There are some things, to me, that are not so fixable. For example, the refusal to, for your US visa could be that you were determined to be a criminal and you have a criminal background. So your criminal background will clearly impact your Canadian study permit application as well. So there are certain things that are fixable and non-fixable. For the eligibility refusals, they've determined that you didn't have enough funds, that you didn't demonstrate you were a bona fide student. You just need to submit a better application, essentially. And if you're choosing to apply to Canada the next time instead of reapplying to the US, you just need to make sure that you have all of the necessary documentation on file and that you've disclosed this previous refusal to give you a better chance at a visa. Thank you.
Thanks, Alina. So the next question is that I am choosing a course of study which has 3 semesters. So how much fee do I need to pay as per the SDS rule category? It further says that generally students are paying only 2 semester fee, and in the past they have been receiving their visa under the SDS category. So please advise how much fee should I be paying?
So for a 1-year program, depending on how long that program is what the fee you should be paying. Technically, we do deem 2 semesters to be a full academic year. So if you provide fees or tuition paid for 2 semesters, which is an academic year for us, you should be able to qualify for SDS. Thank you.
Thanks, Alina. The next question is, if I defer my intake in the same college and in the same course after receiving my AIP, Will it affect my stage 1?
No, thank you.
Thanks, Alina. The next question is, if a candidate has got an AIP but then deferred it for January 2021, how will their application will be processed further?
So the processing essentially remains the same. It's just that if you haven't received your AIP yet, you just won't get one for 2021 start dates, right? And frankly, I know a lot of you are applying and have a very clear plan of what you intend to do for yourself. So if you're applying for a visa for like a 2020 start date, but that is not your intention, please have some integrity and be honest in your application. Like, put the correct dates down of when you actually intend to go to Canada and study, because this is creating more work in the background, which causes delays in processing for everyone, including yourself, right? So let's be a little bit more efficient and a little bit more honest about what everyone is intending to do in terms of their immigration plan and study plan moving forward. So if you intend to only study in 2021, this is what I expect you to put in your application, and not to indicate a 2020 start date because you think you might receive some sort of priority. Thank you.
Thanks, Lena. So the next question is that, may I send my passport to Dubai VFS for passport stamping when I get the passport request letter, or do I need to be there in person?
So if you're going to go to another country to submit your passport or even potentially submit your biometrics, number one, you need to do it physically in person. Number two, we will not facilitate any such requests. You will have to wait like everyone else in that country, depending on what their wait times are. We will not expedite visa issuance just because you might be waiting in a third country to get your visa. So keep all of those things in mind if you do intend to access services at a VFS that is not in your country of origin. Thank you.
Thanks, Alina. The next question is, when will the approved DLI list be updated next?
So the DLI list is scheduled to be updated every 2 weeks. So it was just released on October 20. This is the first list. So expect the next update 2 weeks from October 20. Thank you.
Right. So the next question is that you mentioned that in order to be able to demonstrate that my travel to Canada is essential, I have to show a letter confirming the start date of my classes from my DLI. By this, do you mean the LOA where our initial start date was mentioned, or some new letter? I am asking this because my DLI plans to have online classes even for winter 2021 semester. What should I do in this situation?
So as long as your DLI is on the list and your classes are in progress, whether in person or online, you are able to travel to Canada. Your DLI does not have to provide you any other additional documentation as long as you have that LOA, which indicates your start date of classes. Now, keep in mind that when you do meet CBSA at the port of entry, which will be at the airport, you need to demonstrate still that you are a bona fide temporary resident who is coming for the purpose of studying. So what does that mean? Number one, do you have a place to live? How are you intending to study? Is it online? Is it in class? Like, what is really the purpose of you being in Canada is what you have to prove that you're actually there to study. So you need to think about those things before traveling. Thank you.
Thanks, Alina. So the next question is, do we still need a travel support letter from institutions to be able to travel to Canada for study purposes?
As long as your DLI is on the approved list, you do not need such letter. Thank you.
Thanks, Alina. Next question is that, do we need to include a police clearance certificate for STS applications?
So police clearance certificates should not be provided unless the officer who is processing your case specifically requests it. Clearly, if you want to provide it upfront with your application, we are still happy to receive it, but it is not an obligation, nor is it mandatory for you to submit it upfront. Thank you.
Thanks, Elena. The next question is that, with regards to PGWP, can you please explain the meaning of graduating from two different programs within 2 years of each other?
Okay, so this is with where you're doing, I guess, 50% of the course potentially online and potentially in Canada, outside of Canada, before actually going to complete the rest of it. So to obtain the maximum 3-year PGWP, you need to complete 2 years of eligible courses, right? And what some people do is take one program that is 1 year in length and then add another program to it that is also another year in length to get the full 2 years. And both programs essentially qualify for a PGWP. So, generally speaking, these programs should be done like back to back. But sometimes students may need potentially a break in between for whatever reason. For example, there could be a medical reason. There could be family issues that they need to leave Canada, etc. So we've provided the provision or the facilitation that in the event you need a break in between these two programs. That's why we've given you 2 years to graduate from each other, where essentially you could potentially have like up to a year where, in case anything happens that prevents you from continuing your study, you still have a year later to complete that last program and graduate from that. I hope that's clear. Basically, your graduation date should be 2 years from each other. But essentially, what most people do is just do the two programs back to back, where it just takes up 2 years of your life back to complete these two programs. Thank you.
Thanks, Alina. So the next question is that do I need to follow a particular format for writing a letter of motivation or letter of explanation, more commonly known in India as the statement of purpose?
So for the statement of purpose, all I can tell you is that you need to explain in detail really what is motivating you to study in Canada, why that particular program, why Canada, and what do you expect to do with this degree or diploma once you finish, right? This is basically you stating why we should believe that you're a bona fide student who will depart from Canada at the end of their authorized stay. So explain all of that in detail to me, and as well as any other information that may be abnormal or not so common in your application that may require that additional explanation. In terms of a format, there's really no format. Explain it well. Try to organize your thoughts in an in a manner that sort of flows, because there is a visa officer that needs to read this and understand it. In addition, just be honest. Tell us how it is. Try not to, please don't hide anything, because if we find out, then you may be barred from reapplying for 5 years. Yeah, I guess that's the best advice I can give you. Just be honest in your statement of purpose. Thank you.
All right, Alina. So the next question is, what about those students whose university is not on the DLI list?
What about them? You can't travel to Canada right now, so I'm not sure what you're asking. You will have to wait for either your DLI to be on that list before we can finalize the approval of your application, or if the travel restrictions are lifted. So up until that time, or such that those things happen, there is nothing. Your application will have to wait. You will have to be patient. Thank you.
All right. So the next question is that can we send our passport to the Delhi High Commission from any other country after getting the final approval from the VFS of that country?
So number one, no passports should be ever sent to the High Commission, ever, ever, ever. Ever, ever, ever. Do not send us your passport. I really, really mean this, because we will return it to you. And the process of returning it to you may potentially be long, and you may be without a passport for a while. So it is to your benefit not to send us your passport directly. There is currently a two-way courier system that we have arranged with the VACs. It is a back office service, which means that the VACs still remain closed to the public. You cannot go to the VAC to access this, okay? So you will receive instructions if we are ready to receive your passport, and then those instructions will tell you how to connect with the VAC to arrange for that two-way courier service, and that is how we will receive your passport. We will not accept your passport in any other way. Now, if you're coming from another country, and wish to use this two-way courier service in India, yes, certainly this can be arranged, but this is only possible for people with addresses in India. So if you expect this two-way courier service to send you your passport back to wherever you may be, no, this is only for in India. Thank you.
Thanks, Alina. So the next question is that I got my AIP through the email and it did not get updated in my GC key. Is it necessary to write a web form to IRCC to get it updated on my GC key?
Okay, so you've received your AIP letter. Why on earth do you need for it to be updated in your online application? So you've received your AIP letter, period. That is the end of it. Please don't write to us because you want to see this in your GC key. You've received the letter. Please be satisfied that you've received the letter. Thank you.
Thanks, Alina. The next question is that if I'm currently studying online for the fall 2020 semester and my college is one on the approved DLI list, may I travel as soon as my application approval is finalized?
So sorry, just to be clear, Shakir, the DLI is on the list. So if it is, then yes, certainly you can travel as long as your classes have started. Just keep in mind, like for anybody who's intending to travel to Canada, if your DLI is on the list, it doesn't mean that you can travel anytime. It means that you can travel to take your classes at most 3 weeks before your classes begin. So if your classes haven't started yet and they don't intend to start for many more months, you should not be traveling to Canada right now. Only if your classes are ready to begin should you be traveling to Canada. Thank you.
Thanks, Alina. The next question is that what is non-discretion test for dependents? It was mentioned in the presentation, but I need more clarity on this.
So essentially this means and that should be dependents and not non-dependents, am I correct? So because non-dependents would not be allowed to travel with you. So dependents who intend to travel with you to Canada, their non-discretionary travel is essentially where you're moving the whole family to Canada to help you settle and to support you in your studies. So if the person was only going to come and, stay for, a few weeks, check out Canada, and then come back to India, this is not non-discretionary travel. They're basically tourists in Canada, and this we do not permit. But if you're intending to move the family all together and to stay in Canada throughout your studies, which could be 1 year, could be 2 years, could be more, then this would be considered non-discretionary travel. Thank you.
Thanks, Reena. So the next question is somewhat related to the question you just answered. It says that can we study in our home country till April 2021, even if the visa is issued by December 2020 and our DLI is on the approved list?
Yes, absolutely. Just because you have a visa doesn't mean you need to travel immediately. And if your courses are being offered online, certainly you can remain in India and take those online classes. And frankly, I think that's a smart move because you can continue your studies online in the comfort of your home with the support of your family, your parents who you might be living with. And you don't have to worry about all of those other distractions that come with moving to another country and dealing with all of life's other chores other than academics. You can actually focus on academics. And you could also potentially be saving quite a lot of money in terms of not having to pay living expenses in another country. So certainly I'd encourage you, if your online classes for winter 2021, stay in India, complete them here. You're more than welcome to. And then once you're ready to travel to Canada because your in-person classes are beginning, certainly then use your visa to travel then. What I would recommend, however, is that when you are traveling, that you bring with you documents to show that yes, your classes have started, that you've already begun taking classes, that now your in-person classes are starting, and this is the start date of those in-person classes, and that's why you're traveling to Canada now. That's what I would recommend for you when you are ready to travel. Thank you.
All right, so the next question is that the IRCC Global Twitter page recently said that studying online from outside Canada will not be considered towards CRS points for the permanent residency. Can you please comment on this?
So this is for permanent residency. Frankly, I haven't been following all of those policies because my specialization is study permits. You'll need to visit our website to see what the eligibility requirements are. Thank you.
Thanks, Alina. So the next question is, what if my medical test results expire before I travel to Canada or before I receive my stage 2 approval?
So there are some circumstances where we might extend the medical validity of some cases, and in which case you won't hear from us. We'll just extend that validity and then approve your case. For other cases where we do need you to redo your medicals, we will send you a medical request letter to redo your medicals. So please wait to hear from us and to determine what your next course of action ought to be. Thank you.
Thanks, Alina. So maybe I think we could take one more question. It says that should we mention a dependent spouse as a visitor or as an open work permit as the dependent spouse does not intend to work in Canada?
So if your dependent spouse was intending to go live with you in Canada for 1 year or 2 years or more, I will refuse that visitor visa application because they are no longer a bona fide visitor. They intend to stay in Canada for longer than 6 months. So what does that mean for you? All accompanying spouses should apply for an open work permit because this will allow them to stay in Canada for the full length of your studies as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Alina. So I don't see any more questions which we haven't already answered. Is there anything more which you'd like to add?
Just thank you everyone for tuning in. I understand that all of these changes to travel restrictions is causing a lot of anxiety for everyone. But I want to assure you that the government of Canada is doing its best to try to support students, international students, in their education goals and help you achieve those by coming to Canada and studying. Please monitor us on our social media pages and visit our website to stay on top of what all of these travel restrictions are. And, you know, in case changes do occur, the VFS website is also there available for you to monitor when the VACs may open. Right now, we don't have a specific date of when this might open, but I can tell you that this is being monitored very regularly to look at when it might be safe to open the VACs. In the meantime, please take care, stay safe, happy holiday season, and we hope to see you at our next outreach event. Thank you.
Thanks, Alina. Before we end, I think it may be pertinent to just answer one more question, which we're getting from a lot of people. It says that how will they get to know that IRCC has received their documents because they did not receive any confirmation of receipt?
So I assume you either used the web form or emailed us your documents, right? So number one, if you're sending us documents, please use the web form to email us. And you will receive a sort of AOR, like an acknowledgement of receipt, that we've received an email from you. That's enough. Please do not request for confirmation that we've received your document specifically. If you've sent it to us, you've emailed it to us, and you've received that acknowledgement of receipt back, like it's sort of an automated message, assume that our email boxes have received your documents, okay? And that should be sufficient for you. Just note that we are working with limited staffing resources right now, and to sort of have this very specific, all these little services available to you, like to try to I don't want to use the word appease, to tell you all of these little things that are happening with your application, like whether we've received an email from you or not. Like we do not have the resources right now to do that. So please don't ask us for those, for confirmation of these things. If you've sent it to us, you've received your acknowledgement of receipt, the automated acknowledgement of receipt, assume we've received it and just sit back and just please be patient and wait until we get to your application. Thank you.
Thanks, Alina, and thanks everyone for joining us today. We hope the information given out today was helpful to you. As Alina already mentioned, please keep following us on our social media handles for the latest information on travel restrictions as well as the DLI lists. Thank you and have a good day.